You see, something is going to happen. Something wonderful.
My God, it's full of stars.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. This episode, I got JJ Vance and my boy Daniel Christos co-hosting with me. In case people don't know who they are, because maybe you're a new listener, JJ, why don't you do me a favor and just let everybody know who you are and what's up real quick.
Howdy, folks. JJ Vance, host of Operation GCD podcast. Wrote it down there in the description to help folks out. Like to build my podcast as a shenanigan-infused journey into the mind of this particular garbage can dude. Like to talk a lot about cults like we're talking about today, and delve into some true crime stuff as well. Nick and I do a great series along with Ron from New England on the Idaho 4, the ongoing saga in the Idaho 4 murder trial or murder case and ongoing proceedings. Nowhere near trial yet, but I mean, all pre-trial stuff, but good conversation there. So those are the type of things you'll find at Operation GCD. Nick, I appreciate the invite back. Daniel, looking forward to conversation again. I enjoy the political talk we had a couple weeks back. That was a good conversation. And Dana, always looking forward to another process conversation with you. So definitely looking forward to the conversation here tonight. Again, thanks for the invite, Nick.
Of course, thank you very much. And Daniel, let everybody know what is up with you and Ballbusters and Semper Fry.
What is up with me? Hello. All right, so this show on Rumble, the last place it's standing, because YouTube doesn't like me too much. It's Ballbusters, Baalbusters. The book that's out currently is Priestcraft, all one word, Beyond Babylon, and that went out just before Thanksgiving. So that's out and available pretty much everywhere, and on my website, which you mentioned. So it's Semper, SEMPERFRY LLC.com, and that's where you find the hot sauce and my book and my podcast.
Awesome, I love it. Hot sauce, a book, and a podcast. I mean, what else can you ask for on one site, right? You just need like some fried chicken on there, and you're good to go.
I'm working on it.
And tonight, the guest herself,
Colonel
Sanders, right here, Corner Ballbusters. Tonight, the guest herself, somebody I always love having on. I think does amazing research and just always brings the heat whenever she comes on. We got Dana from Rotting Jules, Dana Duda on Twitter. Some people may know of her. She's quite famous over there as well. She brings the heat on Twitter too. So
whatever.
No, you do. So Dana, let everybody know. I mean, I'm sure pretty much all my listeners already know who you are, but let everybody know what's up.
I'm Dana Duda on Twitter. I am officially not banned as of today on YouTube, and Rotting Jules on Instagram. So this is my appearance back from my ban.
Awesome. And you, would you get like a strike or something? Because I did see that. Like, I think you said something came off, or like, would your YouTube get a strike, or what happened with that?
Yes, for inciting violence from a schizo clip.
Oh, Jesus Christ, I'm sorry. That's
so gay.
Yeah. They really, I mean, even over the years that this is the fourth count I have. I mean, I've seen some like real dumb reasons to give strikes, believe me.
I'm just like, whatever, dude. But like, they threatened to suspend my account over that Dave McGowan thread today if I didn't delete one of the tweets. And I'm just like, damn. Oh, okay. They're going to end up banning me on everything. So I'm just waiting.
That's grimy. I'm sorry to hear that. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But we got Dana on, and we got her on for the Atlanta murders, and I know that is also something that JJ knows a little bit about, so I figured I'd grab him since he was available. And I know that Daniel was interested, so I asked him, and he said he was interested, so I was like, come on, man. So, Dana, what got you even into covering this? I'm just going to take a guess, and probably the Process Church brought you here. But, I mean, is that how it happened, or was there any other reason why?
That is an astute observation, and you know me very well. Yeah, so obviously the Process, their ever elusive, Cloak and Dagger game with their names and fronts that they're operating under. But it's weird because I think it was like a week ago, I found them having federal contracts with Freedom House, which was a really big think tank that Henry Kissinger was on the board of, and it was for rehabs and hospitals and prisons. So this is like part of their like low-key ministry that they're doing, like street ministry, philanthropy type stuff, but you don't get the name of the facility in Georgia. And they're in Georgia earlier than what is told in the timeline by Doug, Lucian Greaves of the Satanic Temple. And they are there through the time of the child murders. In particular, they are there. It's Raphael DePire, aka Father Lucius Nestor Raphael Christopher DePire, and then his old lady who ends up marrying his younger brother, Jana Bernadette DePire. But they're there the entire time.
Who is that guy that
all
you
the
just
way through the
mentioned
murders.
from the Church of Satan? Is that what you just mentioned? What was his name again?
Huh?
Did you just mention a dude from the Church of Satan or the Temple of Set? I'm sorry. You just Greaves?
No. These are like their 10 different names, like 10 different church names from the process. But these are the people that like, these are founding members. And these are the members that on the Council of Masters meeting, when they're shutting down their Rome chapter in 69, like 5 days after the Cielo Drive murders, these are the exact same people. So, they're where the action is. Even though de Grimston's not there, I am not of the belief that de Grimston's not fully aware of what's going on in Atlanta. I just think it's super sauce. And then when you take into consideration what Dave McGowan, documented and programmed to kill about the investigation and like that house being found with like Bibles nailed to the walls and smelled like rotting flesh. And there was, children's clothing. I found those photos in the newspapers. Someone took photos and published that in the newspapers. And the cops were like, nope. Nothing to see here. Move along. Totally normal. And I'm like, okay, whatever you say. On top of the pornography rings that multiple victims were seen at the houses of those pedophiles.
I guess like before we start heavily getting into that, maybe for the listeners, I think Daniel had to even kind of look into this. He may not have heard of it before I told him or mentioned it. For the listeners who may not actually know about this case, like what kind of is the situation with the Atlanta murders? I guess as simple as possible as you want to explain it. Because I know that kind of is like a long out drawn story. I mean, it was months and victims, right? Or years maybe?
So there was over 60 victims that were left off of the list, off of the government sanctioned list. That's from the safety commissioner, Chet Detlinger. But, the list, like the government list was always changing. They were always changing the parameters to kind of like make it fit. They even changed a victim's death certificate post-mortem so that they could add that person to the list to raise the average age of the victims at the time. But Wayne Williams was charged with killing 2 adults, no children, but they allowed the evidence of the child murders at trial. And they also called him the Atlanta child murderer in the press before anything ever got off the ground, before charges were ever filed, and before he was ever investigated. This is also the first time that John Douglas of the FBI, excuse my language, John Douglas is a bitch, but this is the first time that they rolled out their little behavioral science unit, whatever. There's just a lot of really suspicious stuff that went on with that case. I don't think that Wayne is completely innocent. I have a couple of theories, but I don't think that he killed any of the kids. I just don't. There's too much stuff there. And even the FBI, John Douglas himself admits it. He says that there's no evidence. There's like little to no evidence linking Wayne Williams to any of the child murders or any of the disappearances of children from 79 to like 81. And kids still went missing after the fact, after he was arrested. So the whole thing is just a big show.
Do you think he had some...
I totally agree, because the story in and of itself, just from like a surface level view of the Atlanta child killings, should be able to look at that and tell, any reasonable person should be able to look at and tell the fact that they slipped in the child murders without any, he's not charged. Wayne Williams was not charged. He's not convicted. He's not in prison for just the child murders. They just said, look, we're going to add all these child murders onto your case file, basically. That in and of itself, I think, should tell the whole story. There's way more going on here. I mean, there's way more going on here. and the far-reaching network of criminal activity that's associated with this whole affair.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it would be cause for a mistrial. But, you know, when you start really looking into things and digging into, you know, this sort of like network, because, you know, John Douglas tries to paint Wayne Williams as the typical what you would see in Mindhunters, like he's a loser living with his parents, right? And so he's outraged and he's taking out this sexual outrage, and it's just total trash. But, you know, Wayne Williams was really connected. He was connected politically. He was also connected to the entertainment industry, and he worked for Michael Thebus, which was the Scarface of porn. And the Scarface of porn's lawyers ended up representing Wayne Williams after the fact, and were part of the legal team that not only told him to testify, but told him to act erratic on the stand, which is literally never recommended. It's completely insane that they allowed that.
Right.
You know what's really weird that you just mentioned now? That guy was, I totally forgot, that dude was involved in the music, right? You said the music industry? It may not have been like anything huge, but he was. I just find that
big.
I find that interesting how, like, even what's going on today, or even things that me and JJ have covered, you know, months ago. I hate to tell you, before this stuff with Diddy came out, we were pointing out rappers that were already linked to pedo cults. So, you know, this, you know, but it seems to be almost going, that's almost seems like hand in hand, like with certain things that we've covered, that there's like someone in the music industry involved with shit with kids.
They're the curators.
And I hate to say it, but like more of, well, I'm not even going to go there, forget about it. But, you know, rap or R&B, like that style of music, it's just weird.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's a good point, Nick, because specifically to Atlanta, I think the absence of a cult there was a void. I think after all the cult activity of the 80s, there was a void created, you know, in the departure of all this activity. To, you know, after the trial of Wayne Williams, a lot of this activity moved to other locations. This, you know, cult business and criminal activity network. Well, I think they left a void there in the Atlanta area for Dwight York to move down there from New York, right? The early 90s. That's when he moved in and took up shop as you know, owning the rap game down there too, right? With the Atlanta rap scene, all those Outcasts and other Atlanta rappers all paying homage to Dwight York.
Well, then he even had Brooklyn and New York. Brooklyn and New York was still paying homage to the guy.
Oh, it's to this day.
I mean, to this day. But I just find it interesting.
That's a good point.
I find it interesting when they do talk about that cult, and when we even covered it, you heard a lot about what happened in Georgia, but like, again, that's why I found it interesting to film the building, because it's like it's still up and running today. Like, what was going on even when they still went to Georgia? Obviously, Brooklyn was still running, so what was, you know, we only hear about one end or one of the two, if you really think about it.
Well, that's a good point, because I think, like to Dana's point, that DeGrimston, for example, did not move to Atlanta with the rest of the Process founders in the late 70s there. He stayed in Staten Island, but that doesn't mean it wasn't just a separate outpost. Whereas the same with Dwight York's running his Brooklyn operation, and he's got his Atlanta, Georgia operation, or rural Georgia near Atlanta. But nonetheless, it could be looked at in the same regard, I think.
And Dan, I wanted to ask you too. Do you think there's any way that guy Wayne was involved but may not have actually touched anybody in the crime? But was like some part.
Absolutely. So like my theory is, because there were multiple reports. So one of the studios, I think it was Apogee, and it was called like the Sound Pit before that. That's where Wayne Williams took his band Gemini. But then he also worked for Michael Thebus there as well. That place, after Wayne Williams got arrested, it was attacked and vandalized, and the recordings were destroyed. Some of the locals said that it was the cops that destroyed some of the recordings. So what were they destroying? Was it evidence? Who really knows? The parents seem to think that it was. I personally think, from what I've been looking into in the FBI files, the FOIA request, he has a couple of friends that are extremely suspicious. One of them is a voluntary firefighter who you literally see goes and has a private meeting with Atlanta PD and gets approval for all of the equipment that Wayne Williams is later caught with in his vehicle, right? Because they call him like a scanner freak. But the cops go and interview Wayne Williams about this voluntary firefighter because they think that he's the one that's out there killing kids first. And then somehow like that narrative gets changed out of nowhere. It's really, really strange. And then there's a couple other characters. I just found another guy that testified against him that happens to be involved in some sort of like freelance airline marina club. And I'm just like, okay. And this is the same time that Bush is coming to town, because like Jimmy Carter and Bush were deeply involved in that whole Thieves thing, like getting him out, making sure that he was able to keep all of his money, except for the one studio that, you know, the evidence possibly got destroyed. I think that Wayne Williams most likely, just because he was pretty plugged into the entertainment industry by that time, I think that there's a good possibility that he was involved in like the child pornography angle, maybe filming. I don't really know. I don't think that necessarily he harmed any children in particular. I wouldn't say it's outside the, you know, outside of reality though, if he wasn't involved in the production of you know, child pornography, child abuse, whatever, snuff. Because I obviously, with the process, I absolutely think that snuff is involved 110%. Because that just seems to be a consistent theme of kids going missing and being killed wherever the process goes.
So do you think like that's being done before they're killed? Like, you know what I'm saying?
They're
like
filming it.
Yeah, so no, I'm saying like, yeah, like with these children, could they be using them for whatever angle they can for money or whatever, or blackmail and then killing them in the end?
Yeah, I mean,
Mike
O'Donnell just talked about that.
I was basically trying to say that, JJ.
Yeah, I mean, not to be too blunt about it, but I mean, I think that's how they look at it. These kind of death cultists, and to that note, I think that's what goes on with the smiley face killer victims in large part. I do think there's snuff involved with those victims as well. At least in the victimology, maybe not every victim, but
I think even Dana showed on with the Process Church. I mean, so many different angles you can really see that they're truly trying to pimp out any situation they're in to the fullest.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
I mean, yeah.
It's a very capitalistic approach, right?
Yeah,
like
for real. That's funny. Yeah. You know what's funny? They'll pimp capitalistic ideas in ways that only a liberal mind would like buy into the shit. You know, it's kind of...
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. That's a good way to put it.
You mean
because that's who they get to sign up for these programs.
Well, I mean...
What's that, Daniel?
I think it's almost like a trope. It's like a joke when people... Oh, it's the KKK that did it. It's the KKK. It's almost like, are you trying to make sure that I know that you're full of shit? Because that's what it sounds like to me.
Well, that's like, you know, China's a communist country, but they use capitalist countries like ours to make them rich. It's like, you know,
they're a Jesuit country.
Yeah.
I think the KKK.
Be socialist forever.
I think the KKK angle, though, and I'm glad you brought that up. I think that people need to reconsider that in the context of the process, because the process, they are fascist and they are Nazis. And so they would absolutely be on board with running an operation that way. I think that there is a possibility that they infiltrated some sort of extremist faction within Georgia. Because, like, you got to keep in mind, like, Wayne Williams' family, they would travel to Columbus a lot, and Columbus is right across from Phoenix City. Phoenix City is the Sin City of the South. It's right next to the School of the Americas. You also have Mitch Warbell III, Mr. Whispering Death himself, right, who trained like Latin American death squads. I mean, there's a lot of really crazy stuff. So I don't think that it would be outside of the realm to be a Processian at that time, know that angle would be poo-pooed, especially because of Hoover, right? And because of all the known informants that were in the KKK. And, you know, it's very incestuous. But I think that would be an interesting angle to kind of slip that into the narrative and
dirty the water,
just
though, right?
leave it there.
Yeah, kind of to dirty the water more than anything else. Could cause confusion.
Sure.
Because what I was looking at was an interview by some guy who's in the dark, his voice is changed, some witness who wants to get it on the record before he dies, and he was an insider in the KKK. It was just how convenient that this is on national news and all that. The big main channel on the media, and he's talking about this. That puts it in a nice, pretty little package, and everybody can go home feeling good about knowing they got the guy. And to me, I was just like, this is just nonsense.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's a good point though, because relative to the Rowan Williams situation, he really was a package suspect. They kind of, there is some, it seems like to me at least, machinations of a much larger scale on framing the guy, but he was definitely he's synonymous with being the Atlanta child killer. But as we've already discussed here, as Dana pointed out, he's not convicted of one single child murder. So you know what I mean? Like he was a package deal. Like they put him out in the media and convicted him real quick. Very much like Berkowitz, right? Like he was a package deal as well. Like out in the media, we're gonna have a quick sentencing hearing. You're gonna see 3 different county judges in one room. That's unheard of.
Let me just throw a few more deaths into your file here, and
Yep.
Fast track here, a couple more victims, right? Exactly. Yeah, so you can actually make those comparisons as well, between just the whole way Berkowitz was arrested and how he was a packaged media icon, right?
He definitely
pointed out the start of the Mindhunter stuff. These guys were really the start of the serial killer campaigns as well, in the media at least, right?
And so, we're kind of on the same page here, where we probably could go a couple steps back and find military or naval intelligence involved in all these cults, right? That's a given.
Big time.
It's like they're creating these people, whatever they're doing, and then when they go off and do something, they have the cover of the cult, so it doesn't go back to them. It's almost like they have to set that up.
I've often said that sometimes I think they'll just be watching anyway, and we'll let it go really far just to learn, and then they'll step in to make it look like, we got to stop it now. It's like, we watched you long enough, we got this too. Yeah.
And I've gone so far in my research for the Sabbatean Frankists that whenever I hear fascism or anything like that, or progressivism or anything like that, it goes right back to evangelical Christianity, which is created by Sabbatean Frankists. This goes all the way back to, Louis Brandeis basically destroying our entire country. There's so much that's involved in the Frankists that it sounds like you're saying it's a catch-all boogeyman, but quite literally, if you don't want to call them Jays, you can call them Sabbatean Frankists, because they're not really the same thing. And those people created Christian Zionism. Those people they infiltrated when they converted back in the 1700s, late 1700s, and it's still here. It's still around. Brandeis was from a Frankist family. He came over with the Rothschilds into this country. His family did anyway. And look what happened. We had a Federal Reserve Act. He was basically the one instructing Balfour for the Balfour Declaration. It wasn't the other way around. He was advising them. He was doing all that stuff. So a lot of this is going right into the plan of the Frankism. And I think a lot of these cults are just another offshoot, extremists of these things. They might not even know it themselves, but I think what they're doing is they're carrying on these extremely high mind control / Zionist type of approaches to things. And I think that should be seen, actually, without actually saying it.
All sorts of weird shit.
That's some good points there, Daniel. Relative to the Atlanta situation, that Mitch Werbel character, he might be one of the the spookiest of all spooks. That guy's a character. So you want to talk about intel connections to the Atlanta child murder situation? Mitch Werbel, he's up there. He's taken the Guinness World Record for that category.
He's a rare breed. He's that rare one that's literally selling the guns and selling the drugs, and also just being involved in all kinds of shady stuff. He's a lot. Oh, yeah. He's a lot to deal with.
All right, I gotta ask. This is the second time now. If that somebody's asking in the chat. What do you think? And it was a question I did want to ask you myself, but I had another one I wanted to ask before this, but we'll let the listener go. What do you think Williams was actually doing over by the bridge? Or do you think he was there?
That's not confirmed. There's multiple witnesses that say that they did not see him on that bridge.
It's
interesting because when you listen to John Douglas and his narrative of retelling it in Mindhunter, so he's what did he say? He said it was something about the press. The press pushes it out, right? As soon as they hear that we are recovering things from the river. So it's like they fed something to the press so that they were all showing up there. That whole story is it's excuse my language, it's bullshit, because there were multiple eyewitnesses that say that he wasn't there. So nobody actually knows if he was even there. That's still up for debate at this time.
I feel
Do you
like.
think-
Sorry,
go
go ahead.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Danny.
I
Go ahead.
was gonna say, do you think Williams was even anywhere connected, like where he would know what happened to the children? Do you think he
Yes.
might be facilitating because of I just go back to the whole music industry connection, and it makes me wonder if he was a facilitator, a curator, maybe housed them, maybe brought them places or something like that. I don't know. They could have all been dead in like a hostile internet room for all we know, but that was kind of early on. That's 70s, so probably not 79.
I think
Right.
that he was well aware, just because, like I said, it's painted that he was, a loser and an outcast, but he was really plugged in, and so was his family. I do think that he may have been involved in filming and or production, but I just don't think that he actually killed any of the kids. Was he present while some kids were killed? I have no idea. I have no clue.
It's on him if the audio is bad.
I did not laugh at that joke. I'm sorry. Now I feel like a terrible person.
Well, speaking to his connections, though, he worked for this Michael Tevis character, right, Dana? That was his employer, Wayne Williams' employer, right?
That was his employer.
And that guy's level of power is crazy. In regards, and I just learned a lot today from your Twixter post about his the sale of his home or rental of his home to the Bobby Brown and Whitney Houston musical power couple.
Same place you found she was floating or what?
Oh, wow. I had.
Yes, well, somehow after Thieves goes to prison for murder and arson, right? Murder and arson. I think he went to prison for
Racketeering, all kinds of stuff.
Proceeds of his crimes. Yeah, Rico. Yep. Yeah, he gets to keep his mansion somehow. His wife is somehow acting as a bank, according to this news article, and lending $950,000 to Bobby and Whitney, and then they don't pay up the mortgage on it. And the newspaper article says that Thieves' son is a real estate agent, and somehow he's going to be the agent on the foreclosure. So homeboy gets a mansion worth $1.5 million, according to the article. Doesn't have to forfeit it. Besides, from his RICO activities, which is very uncommon. So that to me tells like a very high level of power associated with the situation. And then somehow his wife rents or sells the home. Unclear if it was an actual sale or a lease to people like Bobby Brown and Whitney Houston, who were deeply ingrained in all sorts of drug activity over the years. I mean, if you're looking for a musical couple that's more involved in cocaine, you may be out of luck.
Yeah, he just
the whole thing's so weird. So then she somehow was selling the home, and the son is somehow a real estate agent. I mean, that doesn't speak to some sort of mafioso type operation. I'm not sure what does.
Well, you know what I find interesting with this, even with this situation with the bridge, it does kind of remind me a little bit of like the Delphi, because they are, I think, kind of like really heavily going on this like horrible short footage of a bridge shit, which is just weird to me. And then like,
you're saying like water ritual killings, so we're saying?
Or it's just like, we just like rewriting another, like, was this Delphi thing that's going on, like skimming off of this old story? Or is there something actually there? Because like, then I was going to say, I mean, technically with some of the things you've looked at and like where these Lady Bird Lake things are, they're not far from the dam. I mean, and there are bridges. So, I mean, like, or even Riley. Is there like something up with like, is like that a calling card?
What was up with that cell phone?
Okay, some sort of occult significance to the bridge.
Neither that, or it's like that's just like we did that.
So, do you want to know my theory on that? This is my noited theory about the bridge incident. Like, I mean, altogether,
it's real quick. It's very mafioso if you think about it, because they're all sleeping with the fishes. I mean, you have to think about it.
It is. But my theory is, so after Wayne Williams was arrested, a coalition of parents got together and they had 2 public safety commissioners, and they had like 14 sworn statements. So Lake Lanier, which is on top of a mound, I think it's called the Summer Summer something mound, which is like some weird spooky mound, whatever. But there was a cop there that had a really nice boat, and there were multiple victims that were seen on that boat with that cop over and over and over again. What? So I think that the bridge thing was a distraction from whatever the hell they were doing on Lake Lanier.
Holy crap. And of course, they have to have the official people in it. That's why this probably was contrived, because the officials that are conducting the what do you call it? The investigation are the ones that are complicit or involved 100% into it.
Oh,
it's
I
like,
think you're spot on.
It's always a thing, right? It's always this thing. It's like, yeah, well, you know, let's concoct a story because we can't let this out. It's nuts.
No, that's a great point, though, Dana. I think there's a larger volume of these. Speaking to Delphi as well, what Nick was bringing up before, it's a larger volume of these occult ritual murders that are connected to these ancient sites of ritual murder, these mound sites, where ancient human sacrifice was occurring at these sites, these mound locations, thousands of years ago here in America. And it's my assertion that they're still going on today relative to smiley face killer victims. I would throw the Delphi murders into that category. Is another of these mound site human ritual sacrifice type situations. You know, Lake Lanier is apparently infamous for this activity. Yeah, it is definitely a mound group site, and there's a large local lore apparently surrounding the strange deaths in this Lake Lanier. And I was kind of shocked to learn that all these Atlanta child, victims were up there, and especially in a police boat. But a lot of weird activity for sure connected to that lake. And it's just funny if you go like reading like reviews on Google of the lake, like even on Google reviews, people are mentioning like that lake's taken a lot of my family and stuff like that. Like, not to laugh about it, but I mean, it is kind of creepy and weird that once again you have this occult ritual kind of sacrifice of these murders of these kids that are crossing over with another one of these kind of ancient ritual sacrifice locations like Lake Lanier.
Dana, was the name of the mound Summer Roar? But it's like Summer Roar.
Yep, okay. Summer Roar. I didn't know if it was Summer Roar or Summer R. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so I guess I was like trying to understand it without completely losing my mind, but there was originally not a temple, and then there was a temple 5 years later that they discovered, and so they determined that there was a bunch of human sacrifices there. And then for anyone who shouldn't be surprised at this point, if you're watching me, there was a documentary about Lake Lanier and all of its spoopy vibes, and it had Processian Mitch Horowitz on there, who of course makes no mention of the Atlanta child murders. So there's
Shocker.
I'm looking at something right now that says Terror Tuesday, the Curse of Lake Lanier, and it's underwater photos. The drowned city.
Yeah, so that's a man-made lake. So at one point in time, there wasn't a lake; there was just a valley full of mounds.
Wow, and that's probably why they covered it up.
Well, I think there's a lot of those sites that were intentionally covered up, those mound sites. But I think regardless of the fact that these mound sites sit so far underneath the water, I think that general location holds some sort of occult significance.
What if there's a ley line there? Some kind of
well, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Electromagnetic activity or something.
Yep. No, I think that's precisely what these mound locations represent, some sort of ley line.
It may be not something that would be, particularly interesting to us, but it might be interesting to an occultist. You know what I mean? Like, it might not have anything to do with anything and when you look at the grand scheme of life, but for them, it might be something that might be important for them to continually use to facilitate their rituals, no,
for sure.
If you're like really,
from churches to government buildings to Walmarts. Walmart loves building on mound sites.
Well, that's because they're dicks. They're just dicks.
What's that?
I said that's just because they're dicks. Yeah.
Well, there's a location not far from Atlanta. I think maybe about 60 miles or so northwest of Atlanta. I don't remember the exact town now that I think about it. But they built a Walmart on a mound site, and they actually fought for it. Like, they fought a court battle to do it. And they eventually came to a negotiated settlement with the local tribe in the lawsuit that the tribe had filed to stop the Walmart from being built on the mound site. And Walmart agreed both sides agreed the Walmart could be built, but they would build a mound museum inside the Walmart. So there's a Walmart in northern Georgia that has a mound museum in it, but that's how much Walmart enjoys building on mounds or wants to build on mounds.
Dude, you're not lying.
They would fight court battles over it.
Yeah, it says Walmart's history of destroying sacred sites. And it's talking about Nashville, Charlotte Pike. Wow.
There's lots of them.
That's crazy.
That's interesting. I mean, listen, if there is going to be an occult aspect within a crime, I would truly believe that either it's totally calculated with absurd amount of things, or by the time the news is fed the details, it would have been calculated in specific ways. I'm just telling you. If no, you know what I'm saying? Like, people who are very much into that shit are almost like that with their own daily life. So if they were going to actually pull something like this off with, they're going to go like balls to the wall. In some aspect, either balls to the wall in like what you're actually doing or the perception you're trying to give off of what you're doing. One of those is going to be tweaked.
Nice Wayne's World reference, by the way, JJ.
Yeah. Glad you got that.
Well, I think with the process,
I think that's a good point, Nick.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dana. Go ahead.
Okay. I think with the process in particular, so Sister Bernadette, I find her since 69 all the way up to the year that they go to Utah. It's out in the middle of nowhere at a Royal Order of the Moose Lodge. That's where the process is having all of their meetings from 69 all the way up until literally when they go to Utah. And you can see the transition of like all of their ads that they post. They never list an official address. However, their addresses on their naturalization papers are very close to Thievis-owned businesses in particular. And also, we all know that the process is very infiltrated within like the entertainment industry and especially music. So I think that there is something there as well. But as far as like the calculation, I think that the calculation was them getting the hell out. That's why they left. The ads stop literally like right when they go to Utah, right after Wayne Williams gets arrested. And that's when his buddy, I can't remember. Ronald, I can't remember his last name, Tennant. His lawyer, business partner, and fellow pornography maker, he was buddies with Barry Seal and made a movie about Barry Seal. But we've got Barry Seal in the mix here as well. He had a daycare. That he was operating at the same time as well for about 5 months. Very suspicious ads, and then it disappears and they lose their license roughly 90 days after Wayne Williams was convicted. So is it related? Wow. Don't know. I just think it's weird.
So the people that were... Now, did two different process churches crop up? Because I know they're defecting basically from Scientology, but I thought that was London area. Did they come over here and start, or was that just a completely different outcropping in America that did the same and broke away?
They, in my personal opinion, when you look at like the old auditor publications and you look at the internal documents from the Guardian's office, the old Office of Special Affairs, where they say sometimes we will declare people so that we can protect their cover and they're going to run a separate operation. I think that the de Grimstons were given orders to run a separate operation because no fair game was ever run on them. There's one auditor publication the year that they're declared, and then they're happening to go down to like the Bahamas, Mexico. The Church of Scientology's records say that they were doing paramilitary training. The process narrative is that they're beating themselves in huts trying to find Satan, or Satan's finding them. But then as soon as they get incorporated, they're super plugged in. They're getting incorporated in Louisiana with Tommy Baumler, who worked under Guy Bannister for the FBI. He was a wandering bishop. It's just, I don't see it as they were defecting. I think that they were sent out as a protected sort of cover for Scientology, because they were moving in lockstep with them all the way from day one.
Mm-hmm.
So all right. So to finer detail my question then, were there people that actually migrated from London to here, or was it something separate?
All of them.
All of them did. Okay.
Yeah.
But they completely left and they didn't go back. That was it.
The remaining one sit today in Utah.
Yeah, I know the Utah stuff. Yeah. Everybody, all the happy-go-lucky people go to Utah eventually. From Joseph Smith on down.
That's one way to put it.
He was from upstate New York too, Nick.
Yo, so much weird shit actually has a reason to connect.
He didn't quite make it to Utah though. They took care of him in Illinois.
It's true. Isn't that kind
At
of
least
like?
that's how the story goes.
Isn't that actually their real homeland? Actually, to them.
Well, their Zion is actually, I believe, Independence, Missouri.
Yes, that's right. That's
And-
right. It's not even in
and
Utah.
Up until the
It's
70s,
like-
it was still legal to murder Mormons in Missouri. So I don't know if they're going to be going back there anytime soon.
It's good policy.
Right? Well, there's actually a strong Mormon population in the Kansas City area, surprisingly enough, despite the the murder rap they were all facing for years.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, and I think it's interesting that they have I mean, it's not mind blowing because we know where Joseph Smith came from and what he really did, and then told other people they couldn't do. But I mean, all of the Masonic symbolism makes its way into Mormonism. The honey, the bees, the beehive, like all those things are they're not as well known like Masonic things, but they're definitely Masonic. Just walking around Salt Lake City, around the Salt Palace, you see all kinds of crazy stuff, including the Zion Bank. So,
yo, you can go on their YouTube.
I always like the rituals being the same, the temple rituals being the same.
Mhm.
Sorry, Nick, go ahead.
No, you can go on their YouTube and they actually admit that Joseph Smith was amazing.
Yeah, they try to explain it off.
yeah, instead of having the apron, they have the magic underwear instead. Big difference.
That's an important factor. That is magic underwear protect against knife attacks and dynamite and nuclear weapons. You got to wear those in the temple. They're very strict about that. That is definitely their uniform of the temple. I've had a number of temple experiences as a former Mormon myself.
So sorry.
You were.
I spent years as a child. Well, basically all of my childhood as a Mormon.
Nah, so
go ahead.
I was gonna say, so I had Dr. Brian Artis on my show like over 40 times, and sometimes we would get into his background as a Mormon.
Oh, nice.
Past tense.
Right.
You know, who knows what that is.
No, I haven't been a practicing Mormon in decades, but yeah, I grew up there. I went to seminary school and high school, graduated that, so definitely well versed in the.
Do you like having people follow you around everywhere you went? Was that fun?
Right. It goes with the territory, being in that or Scientology. It's very narking on everybody kind of religion,
So coming back around to the Scientology, so we can get back into the whole Process Church and Fort Pie stuff.
Yeah.
When there's this person, I think he's on BitChute, but he's like a defector from Scientology himself, and all he does is rag on Scientology now. But he seems like he's like a little bit on the Asperger's side. But I started learning the connections between like the Manson family, potentially the Son of Sam, and what that's all about. There's a whole network, and that's all. He basically just calls it Scientology. I don't even think he even makes a distinction between the Process Church and the Fort Pie Cult. I think he just says Scientology for the most part. He's like, yeah, you can hopscotch over here, but look what the source is, and then that goes right back to the naval intelligence of good old L. Ron.
Do you ever think?
And his Crowley connections, right? Even though Crowley, I don't think even liked him. At least that's the cover story. He just basically decided that he was going to be the successor.
Yeah, do you ever wonder if like Scientology is using its funds to pump out these cults and these weird things or these experiments?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, they have a real good way to fund all that shit.
I think Operation Snow White was a cover in of itself. When they were destroying that was just, hey, we can look at this so we don't see the actual they're doing and how intricate they are and how much access they have,
Yeah.
Well, the thing with Snow White is that was a month and a half roughly before David Berkowitz was arrested. But the Church of Scientology had internal documents. They had internal documents that they were very worried about the bad press from the crimes that were later attributed to David Berkowitz. And that seems really weird unless we think about the Carr family and their ties to Scientology and their rumors about the ties to the process. So yeah, that whole Snow White thing is a limited hangout. That's for public consumption, in my opinion. I think that the Son of Sam crimes was a big crux for a lot of that, because that's when like the old guard was getting pushed out and the new guard was coming in, and they were kind of doing this whole reorganization. The whole we infiltrated the FBI. It's like, no, that's for public consumption.
Right. But what is kind of funny though, like when you look at that, it's it's a fun thing to point to when you have, and I didn't even think these people existed, but apparently when you make videos, these people find you and defend L. Ron Hubbard as being this nice guy and everything. And I had to just be like, look up Operation Snow White, click buy. It's like I don't have enough time to get into this right now, but it's just, I don't know. It was pretty interesting, the type of people that seem like they're very nice and very kind and very wonderful, and they're always saying nice comments, and then you say that one thing that they don't like, and it's all of a sudden you find out, oh, so you were a Scientologist or you are one, and that was your boy I just made a comment about you didn't like too much. So it's weird. It's weird how much
you get touchy.
Yeah. Or that you can't really talk about too many things without somebody getting upset. But I mean, this is why I like what's his name? Oh man, I'm gonna get it wrong. Oh, the guy who is also on William Ramsey a lot, who talks about the Fort Pike cult. I can't remember his name. Tom.
I'm not sure.
Tom something. I don't know. Todd. Can't remember the last name. Yeah, he was on my show one time. I'm gonna be back on with them again. But yeah, he gets into the Fort Pike cult pretty. It
wasn't Sean McCann, was it?
No, it's talking about the one person he lands on a lot is the guy who had a finger in his pocket and said, "I have a problem." It's a cannibalism.
Oh, Stanley Dean Baker.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting you bring him up because it's not really directly connected, but I mean, looking at Stanley Dean Baker and kind of his storyline, there's a character in this Atlanta child killings storyline that I'm intrigued by and have been for years, trying to wrap my brain hole around what this guy's doing in the Atlanta scene here around the child killing. He's so ingrained in the child killings, in my opinion. He's also the most prolific serial killer you've probably never heard of. His name's Edward Wayne Edwards, and I think he's kind of like, in my opinion, he's like a general. If you were to look at this satanic death cult, kind of network, they have like what I presume is a team of expert killers. He would be like a general in their form of a military. And it's funny because you can look at when Edward Wayne Edwards was in prison over the years, he murdered people actively for 50 or 60 years on record. There's so many murders that he's probably committed that folks don't really know about. And the only person who's really looked into the guy is a retired detective out of Montana. And he I think he jumps the shark a bit by attributing too much to Edward Wayne Edwards and not so much Edwards being involved in this cult network of, trained killers, killers for hire, basically. But him and Stanley Dean Baker almost crossed paths in Montana back in the 70s in a Montana prison. They basically almost were in the same place at the same time. But looking at the way they kind of operated in their activities, there's a lot of correlations that can be drawn. For example, the Montana Parole Board found no reason to keep either of these sadistic, cannibalistic, homicidal, psychopaths in prison. But the parole board let both of them out. Stanley Dean Baker got paroled. Edward Wayne Edwards got paroled. And Edward Wayne Edwards, again, relative to the Atlanta child killings, he's documented as being in Atlanta in circa July of 1979. I believe that's when the murders began. Dana can probably fill in the details if I'm wrong there. And he gets arrested in 1982 in Marietta, Georgia, for an arson that he committed in Pennsylvania. Now, he's arrested at a Marietta, Georgia PD officer's house. That's where he gets arrested for federal charges for arson in April of 1982. Now, the arson that he gets arrested for is burning down a house in Pennsylvania where his family had been living for just a few months, as they had previously been in Atlanta during most of the child killing time. And they find a Marietta PD police uniform in Edward Wayne Edwards' burnt out home in Pennsylvania. And then he's later arrested at a Marietta PD officer's house for that arson. And he was really very, very close friends, very good friends with the retired chief of detectives from Atlanta PD. And he's photographed with that detective in July of 1979, around that time frame. So he's all over this Atlanta scene during that time frame, deeply ingrained within numerous police, officers in various departments. And he was a career FBI informant. So he was already deeply ingrained within the FBI as well at this time as well. And he, for some reason, it's one question I wonder, what was Edward Wayne Edwards doing in Atlanta during this time? Because the key suspect, long before Wayne Williams, a 23-year-old, black fella, who looks very unassuming and kind of diminutive. Not really a guy that you would expect to be overpowering a bunch of people and murdering folks. Looks fairly unintimidating.
Yeah.
He definitely was an oddball. There's no question about that. But you look at somebody like Edwin Evers, who's looks like a murderer, is what I'm getting at. And the task force was looking for a white guy dressed as a cop. That was one of their primary suspects, long before Wayne Williams.
Yeah, So was Jim Comento. So was the voluntary firefighter. Seriously, same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing. They were interviewing Wayne Williams about Comento before they turned around and started asking Comento about Wayne Williams. And I'm like, all right, which one of y'all is the Fed? Like, it's obvious. One of them is.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned JJ. It was like a couple of minutes ago. It was at the beginning of what you were talking about now. But I just remember that it seems there's things that I was questioning with stuff that we're looking into. You said kind of like people for hire. I
like the concept of the hand of death cult, like Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole.
I'm not saying that that's what I see, but like even stuff with the smiley face killers, I think one of your cases, and I think like two of Lisa's cases in Texas. Remember I was showing you like link back somebody there, like his name is on a company that like uses retired service people or cops for hire, but it's like very kind of bland on the site. It really doesn't tell you what you're hiring them for.
Right. Wasn't it like Patriot Express or something like that?
It's some weird shit. It's like they're not they're not hiding that. Like they're definitely open about, military or cops and shit like that. But it's very weird.
The outfit you're describing right now, Nick, is exactly what Mitch Morbell was operating in this Atlanta operation. Was this commando outfit training people for security and whatnot, and tying that back into the ultimate evil North Dakota, North Dakota narrative that, maybe if Daniel's not familiar with the Atlanta stuff, you've read The Ultimate Evil, Daniel? Familiar with the Minot wing of some of that storyline?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, no worries. So,
ancient history, I'm all over it. Ancient history, I can tell you everything.
I didn't want to talk too far
up, but it's all good. No good.
Nice. Well, I just want to get a baseline of your understanding of that storyline before I brought that together. So, part of the Ultimate Evil storyline was the New York to Minot, network of cult activity and murder and drug running. And lo and behold, this Mitch Morbell character is running a commando training outfit down there, deeply ingrained in not only the Atlanta child murders, but he's involved with Larry Flint out in Los Angeles, and he's a former OSS guy, again, spookiest of all spooks. Well, the company he works for is owned by a gun manufacturer about 60 miles north of Minot, North Dakota. Strangely enough, at the same time where all this other New York to Minot stuff is going on within the Ultimate Evil storyline. I'm not a coincidence theorist, so I don't believe any of that to be a coincidence.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Mitch Morbell was running that same style of weird kind of commando security for hire, guns for hire type of situation.
He was training LaRouche's people. He was training LaRouche for security out there at Camp Cobra in Powder Springs. And Wayne Williams writes that book where he's like, I was being trained under the CIA junior officer program, and I was approached by an old OSS officer, and I'm like, oh, you were approached by Mitch Morbell III. That's what you're telling everybody.
Who died one of the most mysterious of circumstances amongst all of these mysterious deaths in these kind of process church adjacent narratives and related narratives.
What's sick about them now, like in their, I guess back then and in their more, what do you call it, more recent manifestations, is they try to work with trauma people. They're already into medicine with your mind, right? And now they're trying to, basically take it take over the whole realm of if you have trauma, come to us. We can help you.
Mm-hmm.
There's even some weird
really handicapped too.
There's some weird stuff I've come across with I think covering stuff with the Mormons, and like there's even psychiatrists out there, or I don't know, whatever some head type person that's putting these things into people's heads that they were traumatized when they weren't. Mm-hmm. So it's like, did you even have to be traumatized? We had to just make you think you were.
False memories.
Yeah, it's so fucking weird, man.
That's where you can get aliens out of people too, when they were just being cornholed by somebody and they're like, oh no, it's aliens. Don't worry about it.
Yo,
Just entered the
A lot of that goes on.
yo, do you? I can't remember the name of this show. It was one of these off the wall shows on Netflix, where I think like this kid had like this guy and maybe his wife or this guy I think kidnapped like this kid or something, and like literally spoke through the speaker into the back of the RV and told the kid that there was like aliens or something or they'd been abducted, and the kid believed it.
Man,
I was like, yo.
voice of God tech.
Oh man,
Very low grade, but you know it
that
works.
is wild. How the mind just wow.
People are nuts. Oh, and what do you think about Miscavige these days? Like, do you think he's do you think this still running a dirty op, or what do you think's going on over there?
I think that I'm of the opinion, I don't know if Miscavige is still alive. I think that there's a major coup d'etat going on right now with Mike Rinder, Leah Remini, what is his name? Marty Rathbun. I think that they're all getting ready to do another switcheroo, but I don't think that Miscavige is alive. And if he is, I don't think that he's long for this world, because there's a consistent theme within the hierarchy of Scientology where the leader goes missing from the public eye and we're fed some sort of shore story, and then we just never see them again, because Heber Jench is still being touted that Heber, who took over after Elron passed away, that he's still in the hole, even though he's like in his 80s, and no one has seen him since I think early 2010s was the last time somebody laid eyes on him. Wow. But when was the last time that anybody actually saw Miscavige, you know, in person? And it's not just like some film or some promo ad. I don't know.
Was there a Scientology, like I don't know, I want to say like award center, but it's like the AI or the IAs, like is that something that it's like a gala event? Wasn't he there doing some kind of, I don't know how long ago that was though.
They have that, I think, in December.
That's what they say, but I'm like, I don't know. I don't believe you guys. Like, somebody go check the man's pulse. Is this weekend at Bernie's? Like, they have so much money. You know what I'm saying?
Weekend at Bernie's.
Like, make sure that he's alive, because like they were already putting like makeup on him, and you could tell he's got the plugs and the hair and all of that. And I'm just like, someone go check that man's pulse and make sure that that's really him, because I really don't buy it.
It's like the father from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He's like barely alive.
So the channel I found that I was talking about, you might find interesting, is called Dazed But Not Confused, and it's on BitChute.
That's what you were talking about.
And Summer of Psyops is the series that I was looking at with Manson, Son of Sam, and Scientology and all that stuff. So the Process Church, Final Judgment documentaries in there. So that's Sympathy for the Devil. He put that up there. So there's all kinds of stuff on there. I mean, that's kind of like where I got most of my info. This wasn't recent, but he was kind of interesting because he was someone who was in Scientology and not anymore. So
check out in my video section, I think it's like the 5th or 6th down, I have a video about Doug Kramer. There's some suspicious circumstances around his passing in particular, but I know exactly who you're talking about. And he was working on, and I'm able to kind of break down in that video. It's him talking. It's a never before heard interview right before he died, where he's talking about the now public Son of Sam files. So there's some bad stuff that happened with that situation. But yeah, he offers some very interesting insight. I just think that he was, in my personal opinion, pulling away from the controlled opposition, as he liked to call it. But I think that he was actually pulling away from controlled opposition. And there's some very mysterious circumstances around his death to this day. So
you think sometimes people can still be used, but not know that they're being used, but they're still a tool. Yeah. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Still facilitating some sort of, something for somebody, but they might think that they're, somehow freeing themselves. I get this feeling with Kathy O'Brien too. I don't think there's any magical Gaia dancing in the tall grass type of ending for her. I think that was a bunch of BS. If anything, that guy bought her. I don't think that was a rescue. There's a lot of things about her story that just don't add up. And you don't go through that type of trauma and abuse and be like, yeah, everything's fine now. it's like it doesn't. People are destroyed for the rest of their lives. I mean, I know people
Right.
have SRA like big time, and it's not something that you can just, you know, again, unless you're able to splinter your personality again, which that's not healing. There's no way unless you can detach from it that a lot of people can't get over that stuff, you know. So I don't know. I mean, like the friends that I have, they don't think that Kathy O'Brien's telling the truth. And
No, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. That's my
Right.
personal opinion. Never
Complete
thought that
farce.
from the jump.
right,
Mm-mm.
yeah, she definitely didn't just my knight in shining armor, who's bigger than the CIA, came in and saved me. Like, you were 30, they were going to figure out which trash can to throw you in, and he bought you. That's if that's even a thing, if that's even true, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Something.
Well, she wasn't the first one of those characters, right? There was a character like her before her, right?
Arizona, was that her name? Arizona
Wilder or something.
Yeah. I think she might have
Candy
been
Jones? Candy Jones as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a couple. I don't know how legitimate all of them are, but I don't think Kathy O'Brien's story adds up unless it's like a whole lot of self-denial and things like that. I don't know. I think they used her to put her out there. So if she has a happy ending, then you can compartmentalize everybody who's been through that abuse and just
Right.
wipe it away from your mind. You know, it's
Sure.
more for us than it is for her.
I think you're probably onto something there.
Yeah.
Something I wanted to ask earlier, and just from like cults that I think is normally popular and that you hear about, or stuff that goes on with this type of behavior. My opinion, from the ones again that we know of, there normally tends to be, I'm just gonna be honest, crazy white motherfuckers. You know what I'm saying? That it's just normally always
Word.
crazy white people. Now because of some of the Protestant church, maybe like Scientology, there was a lot of things that I think connect to this, that if you also look in their type of like history or their MO, you're going to find eugenics in there sometimes.
Oh yeah, they're all Nazis.
And
for sure, they're all Nazis.
Could these kids have been targeted all black for a specific study?
Well, I know they like melatonin. Or
I mean, I'm just
whatever
being
it is.
honest.
That's-
I'm just,
that's
it's
one of
just
those things,
a
so.
question. I'm not no different.
It's a good question. There were rumors that Wayne was in a cult. Obviously, he had a German Shepherd. That's a major red flag. And Alessandro Papa, who I believe is in Italy, so he has the full collection of everything processed, photos that have never been seen before. But I went through like frame by frame of his video where he's like showing photos. There were multiple black members of the process. There were multiple black members of the process. So it wouldn't just be isolated to Wayne Williams. I think just depending on the situation or where they were at, obviously it would be convenient. But for the most part, I mean, yeah, of course they're Nazis. Of course.
But were Nazis even Nazis? We need to get into that if we're going to talk like that's a
Eugenics.
thing.
Eugenics at the root of it.
Because I mean, the Bolsheviks were. It's like let's push everything and point at them because the Bolsheviks are so damn evil. We need to make everything divert over to the Russia or to Germany and make him the bad guy. Because honestly, like the more you read about World War II, the more upside down, backwards, and bullshit it is, and it's pretty upsetting when you realize, hey, I'm German, but hey, I guess I can't talk about that because then all of a sudden I'm a racist. You know, it's like it's not true.
Sure.
It's all a bunch of BS.
Yeah, there's a lot of that goes on. But yeah, I think to the point, eugenics seems to be an underlying trend with Nazis, kind of even going before the Nazis to theosophy.
Tesla was even a eugenicist, but he was like talking about selective breeding, which I would go with that, you know.
The Kellogg's were big into
I would
that
be
too.
the guy from the Adventists, yeah, Kellogg. You know, if
so there was a lot of
better
influence from
choices.
Blavatsky on those folks. You know,
Blavatsky was so difficult to read though, because she's so like the things she gets wrong really bad, and I can't like carry on an incorrect tangent to read a whole 700-page book. You know, it's like I started reading ISIS Unveiled. I started reading Secret Doctrine, and I'm like, no, that's not accurate. That's not true. So you're going off a bad premise, and therefore it's what am I doing here? Wasting my time.
Well, but the thing I would say is that other people follow her teachings and don't reach those same conclusions.
Oh, right. No, right. It's only because I read like a maniac.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think those are the people that I focus on more than Blavatsky. Is those folks, like any cult leader, the cult leader is never as crazy as its adherents are, right? Like the people that adhere to the cult leader take it to a whole new level than the cult leader does.
Like
And I look at people like Abner Doubleday. Yeah, Alice Bailey, there you go. Yeah. But here's one that gets ignored is Abner Doubleday. He took over for Blavatsky of the Theosophical Society in America. It's also the guy that invented baseball, a prominent Freemason.
No, that part
Well, he
is
didn't
bullshit.
technically.
That
I
part
know
is
he didn't technically invent baseball, but that's what
It
they
was a
claim. he
33rd
invented
degree
baseball.
Freemason that did that, and Doubleday wasn't in it. No, yeah, he
Well,
was,
I
he
realize
was
that, but that is the
theosophical,
narrative.
but yeah,
Yeah, well, he was also a member of the Society of Cincinnati, which is the secret society that started America, and very much, in my opinion, still is very involved in America today. And the power.
yeah, I saw your video on that. That was pretty cool. Yeah, I think
Nice.
you were talking to Nick on that one too.
Yeah, Headless was
Yeah,
even
so
telling me.
Doubleday's in that category. You know, he's a Civil War general. You know, he's
Mm-hmm.
a very powerful guy. But I look at people like that, especially relative to America and the theosophical ideas that transpired in America after Blavatsky's short term. You know, so yeah, I mean, Alice Bailey would be another great example of that. She's impacted more people in a far more Looney Tune fashion, in my opinion, than Blavatsky ever.
You can even go all the way up to Elizabeth Clare Prophet with that one on the Summit Church.
Okay.
Yeah,
No, I'm listening. I'm not hip.
Elizabeth. You know what's funny is Elizabeth Clare Prophet. One of her things. She's the woman who interviewed Anthony Sutton a bunch of times.
Okay.
Yeah, so like a lot of the interviews of Anthony Sutton talking about, you know, the skull and bones and this and that. He's sitting across from Elizabeth Clare Prophet, and
Yeah, right.
she was channeling the Archangel Michael one time, and then you can look at. They have videos out there where you see General Flynn, Michael Flynn,
Yeah.
reciting verbatim at Copeland's like evangelical church the same exact thing that Elizabeth Clare Prophet was saying when she was channeling Archangel Michael.
That's interesting. Is Copeland? This is the guy that like blew COVID away, and like, you know.
Yes,
That's the guy we're talking about here. Yeah.
that's the one.
That guy's awesome.
Dude, he's nuts.
Only for that
Mine.
reason.
Yeah, and when you go back into the evangelical Christianity too, again, that goes right back to the Frankists again. So it's funny how that just all happens to line back up again.
Well, speaking of some of these process activities in the Frankist, wasn't Samuel Untermeyer a Frankist? Speaking to the Untermeyer Park, you know.
Probably.
Oh, wow.
I
believe
know
he was. Yeah.
Darby was heavily, yeah, he was, and he's, you know, between that and Schofield, you have the whole evangelical, you know, what do you call it, progressivism thing going on, the dispensationalists or whatever. So that's that changed Christianity 100 years ago, and people think that's how you're supposed to roll it with it. It's all literal translations. You're going to hell. No, you're a Christian for 5 minutes, and you're telling me I'm going to hell. Shut up. You know?
Well, they do human sacrifice within the Sabbatean Frankish Judaism.
That's a duty. Right? That's a duty. It's not even. It's a duty. Drink blood.
You're kind of mandated, right?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Never be outwardly, but you are inwardly. All that stuff. It's all clandestine. They're perfect. They're perfect match. They're like the match made in hell were the Jesuits and their clandestine activities.
Okay.
Like they're perfect for each other.
Yeah.
And they came together under the same roof with Mariam Rothschild. When you have the 1780s, you have Adam Weishaupt, Jesuit priest, currently unemployed because of 1773. They disbanded for a while, right? They disbanded the Jesuits. Not exactly looking for work. He was at Ingolstadt, you know, as whatever he was doing there. I think he was like a professor or whatever. And that's when the perfectible listing was created, when they had Jacob Frank Meyer and Adam Weishaupt, whose father was also a rabbi, hanging out together, coming up with the plan that's still beating us to death right now. Interesting. Yeah. I didn't realize they had such a convention of minds there. Yeah, and that's what's funny about the Abner Doubleday thing is the reason why I even know anything about that, because when I was doing research for my book, I was about to write it in that fashion. And then I was like, wait a minute, nope, I can't, because there's this other guy who pops up and they talk about him being the mastermind of it. So I was like, all right. Again, I better put the right story in here. But yeah, and Doubleday, I lived in Ballston Spa, and that's where he was born. Yeah. Yeah, I think he was, speaking of Untermeyer Park, I believe Doubleday was first cousins with Samuel Tilden.
He was of relations with Samuel Tilden. He was the previous owner of Untermeyer Park before selling it to Untermeyer. Tilden lost the presidency in the Great Compromise of 1877. It was when they removed the troops from the South.
Yeah.
In the Great Compromise, and Tilden gave it the presidency.
That,
he was
that
actually
was
from the South.
That was from during the Reconstruction, right?
Right, the Reconstruction, right. Yeah, Tilden was the major power player.
Yeah.
He was his mentor was Van Buren. So he's part of that whole Tammany Hall crowd. So very, very politically, oriented there within the New York politics.
If you want to find a really interesting book about the stuff you don't know about Civil War, you should check out Crimes and Cover-Ups in American Politics, 1776 to 1963, I think it's called, by Donald Jeffries.
Nice.
And he goes into
Donald Jeffries, some of his work.
Yeah, he goes into the true nature of Lincoln, who, by the way, when he was younger and didn't have the beard, looked exactly like freaking Bill Nye, which is creepy. But
it is creepy.
But that's a good book. And then when you get into the Reconstruction, you find out like just what the atrocity, how badly they were, beating down the South. Not even just the crimes that they did during the war, but I mean after the fact, they were taking people that were in jails and making them judges, like just anything to destroy the whole structure. They would take anybody, and it was almost like a Saturnalian type of ritual where the slaves became the masters and the masters became the slaves.
Interesting.
It's quite interesting.
One thing I wanted.
Yeah, I like the. Go ahead.
I guess one thing I wanted to ask JJ and Dana. I'll go with you first, JJ.
Shoot.
I guess like with everything, like even the stuff we've talked about, this guy, the guy being tied to music production, process church, just all like these weird things that are lining up, and the way it was presented in the news. Right. I guess, what do you think was the actual whole reason for the Atlanta child murders as we know it? Because I would assume the whole story and the whole way the case is even known to the public is probably all like a constructed facade.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, looking at it from that's a good question, Nick. Looking at it from, kind of a strategic perspective to try to determine what was going on there, it's difficult to kind of dissect. I mean,
I know that's a loaded question. Just whichever the easiest.
No, it's cool. That's cool. I know. Trust me. I've tried to dissect it, so I can definitely answer the question. I'm just saying it's difficult to dissect what was really going on there because you have so many just different disparate parts of the whole operation. It just seems to me like it's another process operation. Where you look at these process operations, they do the same thing. They're moving into an area. They're setting up shop, if you will. So they're establishing their mafioso, criminal organized crime outfit through various revenue streams, be it the child pornography, which was, I believe, very, very much at the center of this whole operation in Atlanta. I think was largely contingent upon wrapping that up. Something had transpired where it was time to go move to another town, whether or not it was a decision made internally to the cult or that was something that some external pressure caused. That's unclear. But what happened was I think they had to wrap it up, and wrapping it up required a lot of people dying. It required having a fall guy, Wayne Williams. Characters like Mitch Corbell were poisoned, supposedly by Larry Flint's brother-in-law and head of his security, who was also involved with employing Bill Metzer, who's in prison today for the murder of Roy Radin, who ties into the Ultimate Evil storyline. So this Mitch Corbell commando character who works for the folks in Minot, he dies in 1983 from poisoning out within days of Larry Flint apparently paying him $1 million to kill all of Larry Flint's opposition, with the exception of there was no hit out on the Thieves pornography empire, right? So Guccione, Hefner, all these porno empire kings, they're all on the hit list that Flint, apparently there was documents of this check that he wrote Warbell for $1 million to go do this, and then Warbell gets poisoned and he dies in Los Angeles shortly thereafter. So that's part of this whole wrap up. So that happens in 1983. Warbell's Warbell's on, not Warbell. Williams is on trial at the same time. Edward Wayne Edwards is getting rolled up down there in Marietta around the same time. I mean, there's a lot of people going to prison. I think there's a lot of characters externally, not just in Atlanta at the same time they got wrapped up that are associated with the process that, especially in, quite honestly, and he is great for sure in some leadership roles, characters like Charles Bluthorn, who I would assert is a Nazi, who was running the Paramount Studios and the global and Western corporation that owned Paramount, that produced a lot of the movies we were talking about last time with Bob Cocaine Evans, etc. So that character, Bluthorn, dies at the same time as all these other activities going on. And he, in my opinion, he's deeply ingrained in the process operations out of Westchester County. He lives right across the border in Ridgefield, Connecticut, just a few miles from the process headquarters in Pound Ridge during that time there in New York, the height of New York activity. So I think, I think the Atlanta operations, they're rolling folks up, folks are getting rolled up in other cities, is closing down some operations. They're moving to other towns. It's presumably is to avoid detection, right? I mean, that's quite honestly what I presume, to avoid detection for, a lot of these things, a lot of the criminal outfits that are going on. But to speak to this network that I mentioned before with these, trained killers, pardon me, in the process, Otis Toole, I believe it was Dave McGowan, and Dana can correct me, she's a Program to Kill super fan as well. So she probably recalls that the Otis Toole, according to Dave McGowan's Program to Kill, apparently visited the Process Church headquarters, I believe, in New Orleans. Was known to frequent there.
You guys.
So I think that's so I think that's a good example, right, of this network. And pardon me. So Otis Toole also, I think, so he's in prison. Him and Henry Lee Lucas are. Sorry about that. They're telling their stories of being this nationwide executioners of different various cult groups, right? They get called in. They're telling that story in '86. Well, Edward Wayne Edwards gets out of prison in '86 for he serves from '82 to '86 for the arson. He's, in my opinion, he's telling those guys are kind of giving cover to a lot of Edward Wayne Edwards activities and some of his network that he's running. Again, every time Ed Edwards goes to prison, the homicide rates in America go down. Every time he gets out of prison over a 60-year period, the homicide rates go. So I think he's some sort of ground commander for this kind of cult homicidal, psychopath network. And, I think evidence of people like Otis Toole, who I think were telling the actual story, right, of Edward Wayne Edwards and some of the stuff he led. And Toole and Lucas, I think, were more of the fall guys for that operation. I think they were involved in it, but I think they were the fall guys for that operation. And Edward Wayne Edwards would be more like the commander of that operation. So, I think a lot of that's just more evidence of what's going on around this Atlanta situation, how it's not just isolated to Atlanta, and it's connected to all these other different outfits and throughout chronological period of time of a few decades, right? So, I mean, it's a storyline that can't be separated from a lot of other storylines. But yeah, it was definitely a criminal outfit, numerous revenue streams of criminal activities and organized crime that they were wrapping up. And while I would agree Wayne Williams was likely involved in those activities, I don't think he was culpable for should be held culpable for committing any of the crimes. Again, he's not convicted of anything. There's no evidence to support that. No one's even tried to do those things. They just say, we know you did it, bud, you're in prison, so here, you killed these kids too, so. And I think he's tried to appeal. There's probably been some efforts around that. And I think, again, speaking to the political power surrounding all these activities, like, that dude ain't getting out of prison anytime soon.
Well, Dershowitz torpedoed that for him.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Dershowitz was involved. I forgot. He's a classic deep state character.
May I just say one thing, too, about the condition of the bodies? Like, now, this may or may not be accurate, but it's what people have witnessed and said, that the genitals in some of these children were removed and that there was incision or injection marks around the groin area.
That's right.
So something was going on. I mean, it's not just a matter of like cleaning up it's, what I'm saying? It's like there was a reason for that, obviously, but what was the reasoning? Was it experimentation? Was it torture? Like, why would you? But if I'm thinking injection marks, either you're preserving something by doing the injections if it's like an organ, type of thing. I think some of the organs were missing. If it was an organ harvesting thing, that's kind of a sloppy way to do it and kind of a dumb way to do it. But if it was just for torture, then there wouldn't be any kind of Novocaine or anything like that. So why would there be why would there be injections. So I just don't get it. I don't understand. And it's not so simple as saying they were just killed because they were killed and it was thrill kill and all this other stuff or whatever. Or that, I mean, there was a systematic thing that was going on that has to point to something else other than the other activities that these people may or may not have been involved in. Like there was something specific about how the actual bodies were found.
No,
that leaves a lot of questions,
agree.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a good point, Daniel.
No, I agree because I'm still waiting on paperwork from a university in Canada, but it's taken me a while, but come to find out because the process, they set up shop on Yonge Street in Toronto, and that was the porno district. And of course, as soon as they show up, babies start dying, and literally the parents are with the police when they find a snuff film of their 12-year-old child and the body being dumped on the roof of a building. So that was proof, even though the FBI denies that snuff is a real thing. I mean, the parents were literally there. But right around that time, as all of that is starting to come to a head and they're closing down the porno district or like tightening it up, then they're also moving factionally into Atlanta, doing the exact same thing. But in Canada in particular, they lied, and the MP lied and said that, it was just for philanthropy and they're a church. They were actually being funded to research the feelings and emotions of the youth in the porno district. That's on record. And I'm like, well, who were they reporting to? Like,
right.
Who were they reporting to? What university? What facility? What government apparatus? So was it an experiment? Likely, because there's letters from David Berkowitz that he gives, like, I would say little chestnuts or hints to try to give to people of where to look, where he's saying you should be looking at the people that own funeral parlors. That's where you guys need to be looking.
Right.
Yeah.
After talking a little bit too much, he got a little bit of a sore throat and stopped talking after a while.
Well, I mean, when you almost die, yeah, you're going to shut up, right?
Right. I'm not sure if he said too much after the fact. Right? It's kind of now he's the son of hope, another evangelical Christian.
Right.
Yeah, but he still talks about the Grimston. Still talks about it to this day. He still drops the hints.
Probably in the same box to where this is safe and material to talk about. You can
exactly
the line.
Exactly.
Here's your parameters. Here's your
I think the only reason he's still alive today is because he's not talking about this child pornography angle, because that was obviously a very strong undercurrent to the whole New York Son of Sam process operations going on there too. So.
Question. Tell me.
He talks about that's what's keeping him alive, is he's not saying that,
But doesn't this also tie into like Boys Town and things like that too? Like, doesn't this
absolutely? It sure does.
Hunter S. Thompson.
Oh, Atlanta.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, Atlanta, because I think it's in 81. And they're like, we're going to do the safe summer, and Bush fast tracks it, which is super sus, because Thieves was already getting in trouble, and so was Jimmy Carter as well, and Andrew Young from the UN, who was like Jimmy Carter's ambassador. So there was some telling tales outside of school about Thieves donating hundreds of thousands of dollars to the Carter administration to get out of prison early. Come to find out, that is what happened. But they're setting up this fast track program where they're funneling this money into the Safe Summer program, modeled after, lo and behold, the Hudson River Museum in Westchester County in Yonkers. So that's what they're modeling it after at the exact same time. They're also setting up with Club Med, where they're taking from New York these officials down to Atlanta, and they're taking 15 to 30 black kids to an island for a vacation,
and there's
funded by Bush.
Yeah, there's something about
that's so nice.
And I wasn't trying to make a joke when I was saying this earlier about it. The part that makes your skin, it's melanin, right? Not melatonin, melanin, right? Is that the right word?
Yeah.
There's something about charging a ritual with actually, darker skinned children is actually the preferred choice rather than a blonde haired, blue eyed one. I don't know where that comes from, or if it's just a tradition of finding, Aboriginal children and they're just these just ones to catch. I don't know, but that seems like a thing that melanin is something that they actually seek. So it would make sense if they were all black or whatever, if they were all whatever dark skinned. It's really weird.
Well,
you know,
I do think, and I have said multiple times, I mean, even in movies, but I do think, especially when it comes to crime, I do think in a way, I'm just going to say it, I do think skin color can be played off of. I do think black
that's
kids,
true too. Yeah.
black kids could just be to symbolize, like, that's the piece on the checkerboard that they're playing. You know, I hate to say it, but they could be doing that. But I'm sure it's much deeper than that. I really do think eugenics was still involved. You know, one thing I wish, too bad Lisa was in here, because honestly, I think Lisa, JJ, and Dana have actually all talked about it before. I know one of the angles that she thought was up with the Process Church and other things that kind of like all revolve around this was human and animal, because of best friends being involved, actual organ harvesting.
Mm.
You know, if you have both of those, I mean, you really could start doing that. And I wish she was here, because she may have actually been able to add, if there was like a specific reason down there that could be valuable or important. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, for all we know, I know we're thinking like, it's just, you know, the groin area, it's a dick, but like, who knows, like,
that was
what?
missing, but that's one thing they talked about.
Yeah, but like, who knows, like, what scientifically, or if you're trying to play with
testing,
play with, you know, making shit. You know, how do you know that's not a good area for something? You know what I'm saying?
An ingredient, right?
Yeah, but so I would.
They go to Utah.
I would wonder if that's.
And that's when they're in Utah threatening to shoot people down with cruise missiles for flying over their property at best friends. You know.
What?
Oh yeah. Wow.
So they finally found something that was more evil than the Humane Society. Those people are asses too.
Yeah. Well, those people. What's the ones that they traumatize you with their commercials on TV?
Oh, is that the Sarah McLachlan stuff?
Oh God. Yeah.
Yes.
It's like, yo, like you're like
talk about psychological warfare.
You know what I feel? You know what I feel is the worst. It's like, yo, like you legit stop to film these things before you like release them from the shithole that they're in.
Right.
Like they think you're there to save them, and you are, but it's like, no, hold on, like 10 minutes. Let me get some good footage.
Yeah.
Like, fuck, man, don't do that either.
I came up blurry. Hold on, try again.
Yeah, you'll be fine. Calm down. Look like shit. Chill. It's fucked up. I don't know.
I didn't hit record. Sorry. Can we do that again?
Take two.
Oh man.
I didn't realize that when you were talking about Doug that he just recently died, like December 11th. Holy shit.
Yep.
Wow. Well, all right.
Cremated and stamped in less than 12 hours.
Oh,
so there's some weird stuff there.
That's so nuts. Like the same thing.
You're right, though. He made some good videos relative to this topic.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to get back into it. I was just intrigued
because
series
we're talking about Daniel. That was a good series.
Yeah, actually, it was because I was having Todd on that I started looking into it, because I know that he was talking about 4Pi too, and that's what our discussion was going to be about. So, and then I kind of left it for a while, but yeah, seeing all those connections, I was surprised. But man, it's like, I don't know. This was quite a long time ago. This Atlanta thing, but it seems like this is like a spot on a map, but the stuff like it's like an ink drop, right? Like it's spreading out into a lot of different areas, and they're still touching on things that are relevant right now. Nick passed that.
Absolutely, because with Boys Town, that is the Boys Town case plays into like the Leave It Mormon SRA case right now, because I've found connections to two people that were named in the Franklin scandal that are directly connected to the case with David Leavitt. I spoke to one of the attorneys out there, and they ghosted me, as the kids say.
Not surprised.
But it's on court records. It's just nobody cares. They don't want to talk about it because that involves DCYF. But that goes coast to coast, Rhode Island, Nebraska, Nebraska, Utah, and I think Maine.
Always for Utah. It's like a hub. Yeah. It's crazy. And that in Houston, usually it pops up in things too, because you have a lot of Fed offices there. It just seems to be convenient for them to be close by. Speaking of which, anybody
Houston too.
What's that? What'd you say?
I was saying there's a lot of Nazis in Houston. NASA.
Yeah, that's true.
NASA Space Center. Nazis.
Werner von Braun.
Oh, is JPL there too?
No, it's in California.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
So
right.
that one's
Yeah,
in
that's
L.A.
right.
The Nazis are spread out. So yeah, I mean, Werner von Braun was actually in Huntsville, Alabama. So I mean, they were everywhere, kind of. But yeah, I mean,
So Richard had contacted me, and he wanted to bring up another idea for a topic for a show, Nick. That would be Jack Parsons and his potential military intelligence background.
Oh,
So,
for sure, for sure.
yeah, that'd
I
be
think
fun.
I think a lot of them were. That's why I was very entertained on that topic, because I really
Yeah,
do think Crowley
and I
was
don't think
really
I don't think it
intelligence
downplays
as
the
well.
the occult stuff. I think it's just part of it. I think it almost like they go hand in hand almost.
I think
Not so much that it's a cover for another thing. It's like, no, this is what they
Mhm.
do, but also it works well for their operations.
Oh,
too,
yeah.
you know?
remember like how I was saying before, if there's an occultist
Big time.
involved in this, it's going to be very like meticulous and detailed. Like
Yeah.
in my opinion, it would make sense if you wanted an occultist actually as intelligence, because then they will even be able to relay messages to you that they can cipher
Mhm.
themselves and already let you know. You know what? You know what I'm saying? Like to tell you the truth, though, in my opinion, I also would think you should really also understand the occultist probably isn't going to tell you everything either.
Yeah, that person isn't right. Exactly.
They could even like write the shit down again,
Right.
cipher it in something else, and people think it's like fucking just trash, you know, or horrible writing and some crazy off the wall stuff. And that's like, you know, secrets that you weren't telling the CIA.
I don't mean to get off topic with Dana here, but I was curious if you had because you have those gematria calculators or whatever. And I don't really know which ones you're using, but I was curious when I was looking at the red heifer stuff, because I wrote about this in my book and I talk about it on the show a lot. If any of those words that are associated with the red heifer ceremony, if they would also break down into words like child sacrifice and things like that, because I don't think that they would hedge everything on a ritual that's supposed to bring about the end of days just for fucking red cows. I mean, they would have to be charging that ritual with a whole lot more something insidious, which I would imagine would be children. You know, that's why I was curious if anything, it just a gematria, if it was as simple as figuring out through a gematria, like parallel, like, you know, the numbers add up and it could also be this word or something.
I can't remember what it was for, but there has been times I've come across heifer or red heifer as a match for things that I've looked for, but I've ran so many things.
All right.
Yeah. So, no, if I was to look at some of the more details, I could actually I could check that out and I'll let you know.
Cool. Yeah, and it could even be something that's related to the event or something like that. Maybe that word would boil down into something that would be more of an indication. Because I guarantee you, it seems like they're saying everything straight out in the open, but it's not able to
I do
be
find that weird.
deciphered by most people, and the people that catch a little bit of it probably don't catch all of it. So
I do find that weird that if you do keep up on it, you will actually find out updates on what's going on with this red heifer.
yeah, they said that April 10th, but here's what's funny is apparently the Passover from the biblical Babylonian Bible there was on April 8th, the same day as the eclipse.
Interesting.
And the Passover this year is on the 22nd. So anytime between that window, they could be doing the ceremony, or they could be doing. And if they do the ceremony, that means technically that they've already destroyed the Dome of the Rock, which means that's on Jordan property. Just another insult, another act of war. And my feeling in all this is that part of this whole thing is, yes, it is to get us to hate certain people so that we come out of the woodwork and say that, because there's all these laws here, because we're being converted into greater Israel right now, and so is Ukraine. But the other thing too is that these are Frankists. They're not even Jews really in a sense. They want to destroy, as this has been like their burnt offering. Like they want, even if they do it themselves and false flag it and say it's somebody else, this is supposed to be like the catalyst that starts the big war, and they're going to take out Israel. And that's part of their plan. And if it's then Rothschild owns this, he owns it. It's like what they say: if I bring you into this world, I can take you out of it too. When you're a parent, I see that as happening in Israel. And a lot of people don't agree with me on that, but I'll hold solid on that and hope that I'm wrong. But even in the writings, like there's been other people that have said the same thing, and I don't know if they watched my show or what, but they probably didn't. They probably have their other reasonings, and I think some people that follow or read into the Frankists and Sabbatai Zevi and his writings and stuff like that, that this is actually technically like what it would culminate. It would make sense that this would be the final shebang before redemption. So.
Yeah, I get that. It's like a
I think
forced
that
end.
they killed Jack Parsons. I did a series on it. I think that they killed Jack Parsons for his nuclear secrets because he was trying to go work for Israel. That's in his file. I think that they killed him.
They destroyed him. Like his jaw was ripped off, his legs. They think he dropped something. Because they called him the Suicide Squad and all that, but I don't think he was that dumb. You know, they just oops.
No, I think that Marjorie Cameron and L. Ron Hubbard like honeypotted him. I think that he was
they did that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the purpose was that he was trying to go to Israel in particular. And I mean, that's where he wanted to go work. He had already set that up, but I think they took him out. And, you know, the timing's interesting when you consider like how everything pans out with the Bay of Pigs and Anton LaVey. His approved autobiography shows that, you know, he had some extremist leanings with certain groups from that region, and they were holding nuclear weapons in Cuba leading up to the Bay of Pigs. And I have a big conspiracy about that whole thing. But.
So 53 is when he died, 52 or 53, Parsons, I think, right?
Yeah, it sounds right. 52, I think. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. And his mother was the one who found him, I think. And he just had to watch him bleed out and die because what are you gonna do?
They also apparently
she killed herself afterward.
Photos of him with, well, they were.
So, I know. Yeah, I don't know if the dog got blown up too, but the dog had some stories to tell.
Oh yeah, probably involved in the whole mess.
Yeah, the dog had seen some
very
shit.
Processian. It's very
Exactly.
Processian.
Exactly.
Do you love your pets? Do you love your pets?
Right.
Is there anything else that either one of you think you could add to this topic before we wrap it up? Is there anything left out maybe that you want to touch on? That's fine.
We had a lot of comments.
Yeah.
So I can leave with some parting notes on the discussion, some bookends, especially something that came to my mind reference to the Boys Town situation. So Charles Manson obviously famously went through Boys Town, his upbringing, you know, big player here in the Process storyline. Very much is the Process storyline, if you ask me. And in fact, if you ask Charlie, he said the same thing. You know, him and Robert de Grimston are the same. So he actually was in the Chillicothe Boys Reform School on a mound in Chillicothe, Ohio.
Keegan or something like that, right? Didn't they call him Keegan or something like that? The name.
Keegan. That was a Fort Pie. That was a Fort Pie nickname.
Oh, Fort Pie. Okay.
Funny you mentioned that because I actually had Mediocre Chingon instead of host of Operation GCD before I joined the chat earlier, but I changed it. So I figured it was too deep cut of a joke. But I had no idea you were that versed in Fort Pies. So yeah, but no. So in Chillicothe in the early 1950s, Edward Wayne Edwards, the prolific serial killer surrounding the Atlanta child killing situation, who's involved in this seemingly occult murder network for 60 years or so. He was in the Chillicothe Boys Reform School with Charles Manson, and that's allegedly, according to some folks, where Charles Manson was subjected to MK Ultra experiments, was at that Chillicothe Boys Reform School, and they were kind of frenemies ever since then, Edwards and Manson. So, you know, they definitely knew each other, and so to say that Edward Wayne Edwards is disconnected from the Process, generally speaking, I think would be, you know, a very disingenuous statement, since him and Charlie definitely knew each other, and they actually spent a couple years together in a reform school together.
Okay, so I remember his name. So I think JJ and Dana and probably Nick, you guys might be interested in talking to Todd. His last name is Wood. He was on my show once. Okay. I'm going to be back on with him, but he goes on somebody else's podcast, and they're like once every month they talk about true crime, and that's usually has to do with Fort Pie Cult and stuff like that. So I'll be on the next one with them on their channel. So, I mean, I'll give you his info if you want, because I think he could be really interesting, especially for Dana. I know you're like right in the vein of this, and JJ, it sounds like you're all over it too. So I think you guys would enjoy talking to Todd. So
nice. No, it sounds awesome. I'm not familiar with his work, but
he's all over not Gordon, William Ramsey's show. He's on there too.
Yeah, I'll try to find that one. Yeah, Gordon Ramsay. Nice.
It's not even spelled the same.
All right.
Yeah, that's funny. Gordon Ramsay. Dana, was there anything you wanted to add, or are you good? You tapped out.
I got a long way to go. So
I know,
now that I'm unbanned, it's getting back into it. And yeah, because I'm Now that I'm looking at it from just a straight Contra angle, there's a lot of marinas, a lot of airplanes, a lot of drug trafficking, a lot of
Ooh.
porno. And so that's the way that I'm looking at it. Because this is getting into the time of like young Jeffrey Epstein, early Adnan Khashoggi. Adnan Khashoggi's wife was a Scientologist. Robert Maxwell was a Scientologist. So, you know, what's the difference between the process and Scientology? They're the same. So there's something there. I just have to find it.
Robert Maxwell was a Scientologist for part of like a persona, I think, more than because he was like a Scientologist. I think that just.
But he was still a Scientologist.
Right. What's interesting there is when you brought that up about the possible Contra being moved around. They say that there's a potential that the reason why Waco was targeted was because they were in a spot that they could have seen things because the government was running stuff, not just in Arkansas, but they were also doing it through Waco, and they were just getting them off the map. And that was one of the other reasons. Plus, they had guys in the church, the big home there. I'm not going to call it a compound. That's just labeling it so everybody can think it's a cult. But anyway, they had people in there that were doing some, I guess, techie work, and they may have been privy to some information that the government didn't want them to have. So that could have been the reason why they wanted to snuff them out.
That makes sense, especially since the late Dr. Louis Joyland Jolly West was consulted on how to handle that whole thing right before they murdered everybody. So
yeah, and then what else?
Yeah.
There was some.
Well,
there was another
relative to the storyline we're talking today, Daniel, in the Waco situation, you're familiar with the murder of Arliss Perry.
Mm-hmm.
Her widowed husband there, Bruce Perry, was the psychologist that took care of the children from Waco. In their little debriefing kind of situation. So I think these weird kind of cult networks, they extend a very long way through a lot of time, and that's an interesting point about the Contra aspect of Waco. I think that's certainly plausible.
Yeah, and I would never put the same type of hue on the Branch Davidians as I would have on like the process. They're not the same. Like these were just the people.
Right.
They were targeted. They were innocent, and they were murdered. And it's plain and simple. And all the stuff that they brought up about it, about Vernon Howell, David being this and that, and a polygamist and a child beater and rapist, and all, it's all bullshit. And they had to admit to it afterwards. But the bodies are already in the ground or burnt to hell. So what difference does that make at this point, except for personal or public, the court of public opinion really is the only thing that matters now. But the government got away with murdering 100+ people right in front of your face with a bunch of BS excuses. And because they did it at an official capacity with badges on and stupid letters on their back, then everything's okay, right? We'll wait till it's your choice, then we'll see how fair it is.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting perspective with the Contra angle. I honestly think there's also a possible motivation that they were a competing operation to some sort of Contra stuff, as in they were the Branch Davidians were dealing guns.
Well, they were doing that at gun shows, and there was somebody else that showed them.
I'm saying, what I'm saying is they were doing there was a larger scope of the gun dealing and trading that may have, encroached upon some of the government's activities of doing the same stuff.
Well, there was one more thing that I forgot to mention is that when I think this ties into Alley North and all that stuff too. But like they were running, the government was actually running guns and I guess into the streets for for gangs based off of guns that they were taking from other places. And I think that the people at Waco knew about this somehow, and that was another reason why they had to be marked for extinction.
Well, that's interesting because one of the primary gun depots from Iran Contra was down there in San Antonio, not too far from Waco.
Yeah. Waco's in the middle of goddamn nowhere. And that's another reason why it might have been a good drop-off spot for the government to drop, But whatever.
A couple hours from some major airports, a couple of different major metro airports. Yeah, it's a good spot to be.
Well, Dana, I think in the future, when you go looking into some more stuff, you should see, it might be hard to tell maybe for the date, because of the date of the crimes going back that far, unless the place is old. But it might be interesting to look into a Rotary or a Lions Club near there, because
I
of
got
the
the
water.
Loyal Order of the Moose,
Oh, yeah,
baby. I'm learning
yeah.
about that gay club and what those boys are doing. I'm like,
Dude.
because that's where the process is. And
They're
I'm like,
all there.
okay, so what other mounds are around this super gay fraternity and what are they doing? Because I already got a whole separate PowerPoint on the
Nice.
Loyal Order of the Moose. I'll talk about it eventually, but yeah.
The-
You
the
know what's
reason-
hilarious, JJ? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
What's
The reason I just
that
bring
what-
up the boats is because the Rotary Club is because they have boats. So when there's
Yes.
bodies of water, you have to start.
Okay, with Lake Lanier.
Yeah.
Okay, I
Yeah.
got you. All right.
And
Yeah.
I'll add it into the mix.
and be on the lookout for any type of helm type of symbolism too. You know, the wheel that you turn.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's big, and then actually crosses over into like Christianity and stuff like that too. But it's a cover for that stuff, you know. JJ, it was funny when you were talking about the Native Americans having problems with Walmart and stuff like that with the mountains. I'm like, thinking to myself, I was like, they didn't fucking build them either. That's not them. They didn't build them. They can they can claim it all day long because they went. We're working off fake history here, but sure, go ahead. That's like saying that the Egyptians, made the pyramids.
That's a good point. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and a bunch of Mayans who throw spears all day made those really beautiful pyramids, right? Sure, they did. They just. Meanwhile, they're ripping people's hearts out and burning them, but that's just part of the game.
Well, it's not like the 4-Pi Club or 4-Pi outfit there.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? People relate that to Aztec, but so did Babylon. People, the were ripping out hearts and burning them in Babylon too. So
exactly, yeah, that's very old world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
they could have a connection though. There is actually a Frisian in the culture by the name of Inca, Inka, who left the Netherlands type homeland when they were disbanded after some sort of cataclysm, right? And one went this way, one went the other way, one stayed, and they have no more record as to which way the guy named Inca went. So who knows? Maybe he showed up in the Americas.
Well, it's starting to sound like a Mormon now.
There could be something to. Yeah, I mean, even if you have this much of the Frisians were like Scythian and those types,
right.
Germanic people.
Well,
but if you have this much truth, you can build a whole bunch of bullshit off it. But that still doesn't mean that the little piece of truth isn't true.
I think no, for sure, that's a good point. I think all those cultures they're found in the mountains because I think all those cultures were coming over to the quote unquote New World, as we call it, or as we call it modern historians.
Besides leveling them, on the down low, has anybody ever seen what the hell's in it? Like, is there a structure, like little sticks holding up a big thing? Like, is there a quarter? Is it hollow? Like, nobody fucking knows. Do they?
No, there's some of them. Some of them are cairns, like the stone. Some of them are stone structured in the interior. Uh-huh. Some of them don't have any structure. Some of them do have wooden structures. Yeah, there's various types of architecture involved.
There's one in Cahokia that's kind of a big deal, and it looks like it's leveled off, like it doesn't have the capstone on it. It's like almost like a pyramid style mound, and that is very close to where the totality is going to be coming over for the eclipse.
Oh, interesting.
Not too far off it, like maybe it's not directly underneath it, but it's close.
Yeah, that's a site of a lot of ancient human sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
Cahokia.
Yeah. They like that stuff.
Well, they've excavated some of the mounds in recent years and have kind of come to some conclusions anthropologists have in regards to some of those ancient human sacrifices there. So, I mean, it has been a topic, at least that site specifically has been fairly well studied.
What makes me wonder, what makes me wonder though is the people actually responsible for the mounds being, doing X, Y, and Z as their like traditions. And then you have somebody who comes along that's not very well known, obscure, but they kind of occupy it. Like they come after the fact and they just kind of dwell there. How do we know that it's not their practices that brings in the sacrifice, and maybe not the people who actually built it? Like this is like a degradation or a de-evolution. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like a later group co-ops the site and what they want with it. Right. Yeah.
They couldn't build it if they tried. So like similar to other places on the earth. They couldn't build it if they tried, but hey, if you came across this place, you wouldn't leave it to go, make a stick hut. You're gonna chill here, right? So
yeah,
and then you can tell everybody else how awesome you are for building.
I think to a certain degree that probably is what has occurred to a lot of these mound sites. I mean, even the name of the mound you're talking about, Monk's Mound, that was co-opted by a bunch of French Trappist monks in the early 1600s. That's why it's called Monk's Mound today.
That's interesting. Really, that's funny.
Yeah, they were the Cistercian monks, the Knights Templar monks.
Yeah,
The Templar have a great history with the mounds predating Columbus here in America.
Dude, the Jesuits all over this country,
Something up with those
all
mounds.
over here and all over South America, like they just destroyed culture everywhere they went. And
Oh, yeah.
a lot of broken. And dude, Paraguay was the worst. You know, reduction of Paraguay, straight up communist commune.
I don't know if you've tracked some of the Jesuits, settlement into America. I think after about 1823 when they were allowed in. They were only allowed in Pennsylvania previous to that because of the Quakers being so, liberal.
But they were here before that too, though. I mean, they were here.
Right, but they weren't really allowed to set up shop across the new Northwest Territory of America yet. They were in the East. They were in the original colonies.
Right.
They were in Ohio, Indiana, Wisconsin, etc. Iowa. That all started in the 1820s, and they started building. The Jesuits specifically started building on mound sites. So you can actually look and see the settlement of a lot of this Northwest Territory area, the Ohio country, where the Masons are moving into town. They're building on a mound site. The Jesuits are moving into town, immediately thereafter. They're building on a mound site in the town.
Right. They knew
so
something.
really, there's this weird kind of occult, settlement of America through groups like the Jesuits. Yeah.
And they were disbanded from 1773 to 1814. So just enough time for us to become to gain our independence and all that stuff, right? Then right back in the game again. Pretty interesting.
No, for sure it is.
Also, never mind. We're on a tangent now. I'll save that for some other day.
I can talk mound stuff forever. So
There's something up with those
Nick,
mounds.
The one thing that I saw in your chat that I know that this is all a success is someone said because of us, they decided to not go work at Best Friends Animal Society.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
I'll take that as a win.
nice.
Ooh, nice.
Save somebody.
Yeah, that's good.
Yes, we
That's a
did.
good thing.
Good job, everybody.
Oh yeah.
And I
like
blinked and there was 183 more comments on there, so that's pretty
Oh,
awesome.
nice.
Yeah. The chat was pretty live tonight. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, everybody.
Yeah, Saturn 33, Amaltz, and those guys, they came over from mine too.
Thought so.
So there's quite
Very
a
nice.
conversation here too. I'm looking at it.
Very nice.
We did.
Awesome. We'll go with Daniel. You want to plug your show real quick before we wrap it up?
Yeah, sure. So on Rumble and wherever podcasts are, you can find Ball BAAL Busters, and just go ahead and check out the topics description. It will show you where you can find the book, and I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on again. I always have a good time.
Oh yeah. No, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, and I will. If the link isn't in the bottom now, I'll make sure it is after the fact. JJ, I don't mean to put you on the spot before you close out, but we did have somebody in the chat asking a few times, where is this amazing accent coming from?
Oh yeah, I saw that question. I'll answer that.
Yeah.
That's it's an American accent. It's from America.
Nice.
Yeah, wow.
That's pretty rare, man. Well,
Right.
it is at the rate they're going. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
That deep
It'll
London.
be with the minority here in the future. No, it's a great conversation. I appreciate the invite, Nick. Daniel's great conversation. Dana, always nice to have a process conversation. You learn something new here every time. But yeah, no, host of Operation GCD, JJ Vance. Sure, my link tree will be in the notes. I'm sure Nick will put that in there.
Yes, if it's not, I will definitely. Add
Awesome.
it. And
Garbage
thank you,
can dude, right? That's what it stands for.
Garbage can do. Yep.
Yeah.
favorite garbage
That's
can
me.
dude. And thank you always, man, for coming on. You always bring tons of info to the topic. I always appreciate it. Thank you.
No,
And,
awesome. I appreciate it.
and the guests themselves, Dana, thank you again. It's always wonderful to have you on. And like I did say earlier, I expected this to be a few episodes, so I'm sure hopefully maybe in a month we could come back because you'll just be still going with this topic at that point. So. Yeah, I really appreciate it, and I can't wait to have you back on to talk about more of it. Let everybody know where they can find you again.
Temporarily, YouTube, Rotting Jules, Twitter, temporarily, Dana Duda. Otherwise, I have no idea.
Do you stream to Twitter when you do?
No.
You should start doing that just in case you lose YouTube. You can still stream to Twitter and people could watch. Just a thought.
Is the topics really appropriate for Twitter? What I'm talking about? I mean, I'm surprised I've lasted this long.
That's
so, I mean, I
true.
don't
That's-
know.
I'm streaming us on
Yeah, I didn't think
my
about
Twitter
that.
right now, as well as
Nice.
Rumble.
We'll
I
see.
do it all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, it may
Rumble and
actually
Twitter.
We'll see.
take the fun out of Twitter because of the people that will comment to your lives. It may not even be worth it. I see what you're getting at.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a suggestion. So yeah, go check out her stuff. It's on the bottom. Definitely check out her work. I think she does some really great stuff, and that's why I have her on over and over again, because she does great stuff. So thank you all again, and thank you everybody in the chat. There was a lot of people in here, a lot of people saying a lot of great stuff. I threw it up on the screen for the people who, I guess, watched the video at the replay. But if you want to check out the live, I do suggest to read the chat. There is a lot of good stuff in there, and even just some funny conversations as well. And that is the end of another Occult Rejects. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.